Hello, good morning. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone who is joining us today. We do have members joining from all over the globe. So first of all, thank you for being with us for this really exciting event that we have planned for you. My name is Manish Malhotra. I am the current chapter president for TiE DC. This is our first ever diversity and inclusivity event. However, I have to say that last month, some of you probably attended the last month's event, which was on Women's Who Inspire. And again, it was part of our inclusivity initiative this year. So we have a fairly packed agenda for today. As let me go to the agenda for today. So as you can see, we have a very packed agenda. I'm not going to read this slide. We will run through the entire agenda. We're going to make this very crisp so that we can get to the end. We do have a networking session also planned for some of you, and you will get instructions as to how you can join the networking session at the end of the event. So having said that, let me first and foremost introduce you to TiE. As the registrations were coming in, and I'm very proud to say that we have over 110 people who registered for this event, and people will continue to join in as we move forward. But a lot of you we saw were not TiE members or were not from the TiE community. So for the benefit of all those people, I do want to introduce you to TiE. TiE is the Indus Entrepreneurs. It was started back in 1992, in Silicon Valley by a few very successful entrepreneurs. We are a very strong global network, about 64 chapters in 14 plus countries, 15,000 members. So you can see we are all around the globe. And that's why I said good morning, good afternoon, good evening, because we have people joining from all over the globe today. The TiE network has a global reach with a local focus. So TiE DC is a local chapter. Our main efforts focus on mentoring, networking, education, funding, and incubation of startups and businesses. Obviously, the TiE DC chapter focuses a lot on the government contracting side because we have, with our proximity to the US government here in DC, obviously GovCon is a huge focus. Now, having said that, let me move on to today's event, which is, I will say, very timely, and it is sensitive, but on behalf of the entire TiE DC board, the 2020 board, and you see on your screen, all the board members' names are listed. On behalf of Sundi Natarajan, who's the president-elect, and the entire board, I do want to mention that TiE supports the rising voices that are calling for reforms to eliminate systemic racial bias and resulting inequity. We believe that entrepreneurship is a powerful force to address economic inequity. Some of our TiE chapters in the US have ongoing initiatives to reach out to discriminated and underrepresented communities. Now, I didn't want to read that, but it is important because this was the message put out by TiE Global also. Now, having said that, let me just quickly share with you what TiE DC as a local chapter is doing towards diversity and inclusivity. First and foremost, we are observing the entire month of September as our inclusivity month. With that, what we've done specifically this month, we are offering free regular membership to any of our local Black community startup entrepreneurs. In addition to that, if you have a successful business, we are offering the local Black community leaders and executives free charter membership for the entire year. Just to give you a little bit color on what charter membership is, charter members are in the TiE community. Charter members are a bunch of members who are fairly successful, and we basically form a very strong global network. We have a number of initiatives that are very catered towards just charter members. Now, in addition to that, we are reserving up to 5 spots for our Black community participants, students for our TYE, upcoming TYE program in 2021. TYE stands for the Young Entrepreneurs, where we recruit and we go through a complete 6 to 8 month curriculum with students, high school students, teaching them about entrepreneurship. And then there is a complete global competition where they can compete and win, the teams win, right? In addition to that, we are offering free mentorship sessions to any startup who might want to connect with any of our board members, okay? Now, moving on, in support of, everything that I just said in terms of TiE's global support towards diversity and inclusivity, I am honored to have Mahavir Pratap Sharma, our chairman, the TiE Global, he's the chairman of the TiE Global Board of Trustees. I am delighted to have him as part of this event, and I will have him speak to you all for a couple of minutes. Mahavir, it's all yours.
Thank you, Manish. Good afternoon, everyone in DC. Good morning to the West Coast, and good evening to everyone in India. Great stuff, Manish and team, and TiE DC. I think this is what matters the most. Diversity, inclusivity, access to everyone, and providing a equal platform and equal access to whether it's membership at whatever level, whatever tier, mentoring and hand-holding, and that's very key, and I'm glad that you're doing that. And it's chapters like you, chapters like Atlanta, chapters like Oregon, which have initiated or pushed global into a mode where we have launched a global program called TiE Access. And in addition to what you have said, and I will not repeat the free membership bit and the mentoring bit and the TYE bit, what we have done is that all these startups that come into as members, or all the TYE participants, or all the TiE women participants have a free access to the Global Angels program, which basically means that the top few teams, 3, 5, 10, depending on whatever the chapter wants, will actually go into be invested into by investors, which is part of TiE's mandate to invest in these startups and bring them to fore and let them work in an ecosystem that's equal and take them forward. So the Global Angels program in the US and the Indian Angels program in India will both be fed through this program that all the chapters who participate in the TiE Access program will do. So basically, starting from the bottom of the pyramid, starting from the core, starting with the chapters, we want to handhold and take these underprivileged communities, underrepresented communities, to a level where they become startups and unicorns of the future without taking much time. And I would be happy to listen to the great panel discussion and other conversations. I wish everyone the very best, and I hope the TiE Access program at the chapter level and the global level will reap a lot of benefits. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy.
Thank you very much, Mahavir. So for those who do not know, Mahavir was actually dialing in from India. It's like, I think, 10 p.m. there in the night. So again, thank you so much for all your support. I know yourself, Vijay, everyone has been very supportive. So thank you so much. Moving on, it is again my complete honor to introduce you all to our keynote speaker for today, Delali Desiraza. Delali is the CEO and founder of Fearless, a full stack digital services firm in Baltimore. He has chaired the inaugural DevOps Days, Ops Days Baltimore, and is a founding member of the governing board of the Digital Services Coalition. He is the chair of Hack Baltimore, a citywide innovation movement that teams up technologists, civic leaders, and city residents to design sustainable solutions for Baltimore's biggest challenges. Last year, Delali testified to the US Senate Small Business Committee on behalf of the National Hub Zone Council for the Small Business Reauthorization Act. He was also awarded the National Hub Zone Corporate Citizen of the Year in 2020. With that, Delali, thank you so much for accepting our invitation to speak today. We are all looking forward to it. I will turn it over to you now. Thank you so much.
All right, so I need video access.
Yeah. Jennifer, can you turn on Delali's video, please? Thank you. I will switch mine off.
All right. And if I can grab the screen back, there you go. Perfect. Let me know if you guys can see my screen okay?
We can.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, perfect. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for the opportunity to chat with you guys today. I mean, it's interesting. You spoke a little earlier about this idea of diversity and inclusion and providing access to entrepreneurs. That is very much my story. I grew up as a software engineer, and in that space, I understood software. I understood how to build capabilities, but I really didn't understand, like, how do I start and, like, grow a business? And it was really a CEO of a local company here within Maryland that gave me an opportunity, gave me a shot. And as a result, you know, so much of my story and so much of what we've been able to do is a result of someone giving us access. Again, sometimes it just takes an opportunity. So that being said, thank you for the grateful introduction, great introduction and the opportunity to be here today. So the big takeaway is I love tech, right? I absolutely love technology and making sure that it's working for people, right? And with that, you know, through lots of experience, you know, founded an organization called Fearless. So at Fearless, I'll talk a little bit about, you know, Fearless and actually drill into Fearless quite a bit in our story, because I think our story is important as a part of this diversity and inclusion story. And at the end, I'll give you a couple tips and some of the blueprints and how we built Fearless and how we view diversity and kind of our responsibility within that space in general. So at Fearless, our mission is to build software with a soul. And our vision is to create a world where good software powers things that matter. So what in the world does that mean? That means when you're looking at your phone and you're on your social media or you're on LinkedIn or what have you, that technology just seems to work. And oftentimes when we think about the public sector and people and organizations that are meant to build things to service the residents, service the population, service citizens, that tech doesn't work. You know, you often cringe, you think about going to a government site and is my email address going to actually work because they don't recognize anything but a .com. And I've had that happen many a times. Or you cringe at that, it's just not going to work. You're going to need a manual, you're going to need training, we're going to have to be on the phone all day. And so we really exist to fit that gap and to be in this space. We're bringing over cutting edge technology to support the public sector. So what is it that we do? What we do really boils down to three things: design, engineer, and deliver. So from a design perspective, it really is about the human and keeping the person and the human at the heart of everything that we do. It's not just about making things pretty, but ensuring that that's the perspective that we're following as we're delivering our solutions. Number two, we engineer. And so those humans we talked about a little bit earlier, we build custom solutions for those humans that we mentioned. And they start off as small applications that are prototypes, and they scale up to millions and millions of users. And so we've been pretty proud to support some pretty awesome initiatives. And then we deliver. And deliver isn't just about products. It can be. It can be a product, it can be a startup, it can be an organization. Wherever something is on their digital transformation journey, and everyone is somewhere along that journey, we partner with them and help them move forward in their transformation journey. So that's a little bit about what we do. So who we are? Who are we? Who is this group of rebels within Fearless that are wearing purple and love purple so much? First of all, we're enthusiasts, we're change makers, we're problem solvers, and really love this tech for good movement. Technology ought to work for people. And so I'm thinking through this story, and we mentioned, you know, how we got started and someone giving me a shot at an opportunity. When Fearless started, we were primarily in the national security realm. And so we're doing intelligence-based work and building capability, particularly in that world. And we knew we wanted to make an impact. And we'd go talk to people outside of that space to say, hey, you guys sound really awesome. Do you have a portfolio, or what's your past performance? Can we see what you've done? And we'd often cringe because we'd say, can't tell you, it's classified. And they said, okay, well, who are you working for? Can we go talk to someone? Can't tell you, it's classified. So it became this thing where it's really hard to break out and really make the impact you were looking to make. And we got an opportunity. We saw a problem within the Small Business Administration around their Hub Zone program. And it's meant to really service underutilized business zones and communities within the country. So we fell in love with the program, and the government as a whole wasn't meeting its goals. And so we felt like we can solve that. We're change makers, right? We're problem solvers. So we scraped all their data and built a tool that we thought was better than what they had. And so it got so much attention that SBA caught wind after we shared it with a bunch of Hub Zone companies, and they were using it and leveraging technology. Well, they said, hey, They award us a contract to modernize all their technology nationwide. We started off with a string of interesting engagements for us. In fact, we collected a number of top-level .govs, SBA.gov being one of them, so helping millions of entrepreneurs across the country start and finance their organizations. We also run search.gov, the federal government search engine. So as people are looking for new capabilities, they're looking for resources, they're using our technology. We run login.gov, which is the single sign-on and identity provider for the federal government. So if you're applying for global entry, you're using our tech in the background to get your online credential. And challenge.gov, the innovation portal for the federal government. We've also been a part, as was mentioned, of the DSC, the Digital Services Coalition, and that's a band of small businesses just like ours all across the country, leading transformation and driving change from healthcare.gov to va.gov to vets.gov, transformation in the state of California, Colorado, Connecticut, Texas, and all across the country. And those are the ones I can rattle off the top of my head. So awesome group of organizations, and we're one of the founding members of that. We've been partnering with the U.S. Air Force and leading a transformation project with their BES portfolio. And they manage all of the business applications and the mobile development and the mobile center of excellence for the Air Force. And so we've been partnering with them to bring that capability forward and help them to start up their new software factory. We talked about this world where good software powering things that matter. And so for us, we realized we cannot do that alone. We do not want to do that alone. And so we need lots of partners at the table, and there just isn't enough capability in this space. So we started Hutch about 2 years ago, and that is our digital services startup studio. And so we were able to take companies as early stage as, I think I got an idea and I think I want to start a tech company, to revenue and scaling within our 2-year program. It is not a 13-week accelerator. It is not a quick incubator program. It is a 2-year structured program where we can get people from relatively early to scaling within 2 years. And so we're not busy doing that in our nights and weekends. We're running Hack Baltimore through a local nonprofit that we stood up. And Hack Baltimore really is, how do we take all of that rigor that we apply in our 9-to-5s and apply it to community work? So through the lens of public safety, housing, transportation, education, you name it, all the meaty things that allow any city to function and operate, how can we get the right people to curate the challenge, get the right people to the table to do some discovery, and the people that are most affected, making sure they're at the table as well, co-build and co-create the solution together and sustain it. So that's kind of who we are, what we do. Now, how do we do it? And I really want to spend some time. I know I've gone relatively quickly about our background, but I'd like to spend some time about what is our blueprint? How is it that we've got here? How is it that we drive? And it's really based around 3 things. And we base everything around our customers, culture, and community. And I will come back to that in a second. But the first thing that we recommend to the startups that we work with, and something that we take very dearly to heart within Fearless as well, and before you can even get into thoughts about diversity and inclusion and what we should do, is it always starts with your why. It starts with your why. Why are you here? Why do you exist? I love how Jim Collins phrases it, and he talks about visionary companies. And he says, those visionary companies always determined who it is they wanted to be before they determined what it is they wanted to sell. Because that will transcend. So who are you? What is your why? What makes you tick? I love how Simon Sinek phrases this and says, few organizations know their why and understand their why, right? He talks about it's not about just making money. It is not about making money. It's not just about your profits. It's not just about your balance sheet. That is the result. The why is a purpose. It is a cause. It is a belief. It's the very reason why your organization exists in the first place. And so when we think about the concepts of diversity and inclusion, if your why isn't grounded, you'll never be able to make real impact in this space. And so I always tell people, like, go back to your why. Why are you here? Why do you exist? And it doesn't become just an add-on that you tack on at the end. It's not just charity work. It's not just a give back. It's got to be core and fundamental to your organization as a whole. So at Fearless, what's our why? Why do we do what it is we do? We believe that government services, they ought to be world-class. And they ought to work for the people. Oftentimes, they're the laughing stock of the industry. When you think about, oh, this government site, you cringe. But they ought to be world-class, and we believe that. And so that's part of our why, and it drives us to do what it is we do and the people that we serve day in and day out. So not only is that our why, you should always start with your why, but you have to live by what you believe. You got to stay true to who you are. In order to live by it, you got to know what you believe. And so at Fearless, there's a string of things in which we believe. And the first one being that people matter. Everybody matters. It means that inner city kid that's struggling to get started, that may have to work to provide food for their home. It means that returning citizen that is having a hard time getting their life back together because they can't get an ID, because they don't have a home address. It means that immigrant that's trying to figure out how to get their papers, to get their credentials and become a citizen. All of that has to work, and those people matter. Those are the people that we're working for day in and day out, and all of them, they matter. We believe that starting with what you have will get you what you need. And so people try to create such a big thing, and it is a big thing about diversity and inclusion and how do we end systemic racism. Yes, and we need to tackle some of these big, meaty issues. But there are things that we can start today. We don't need a new policy from Congress in order to make a difference and make an impact. You don't have to be a millionaire to make an impact. Everything you need is already in your hands. And oftentimes we just need to start. You start, you iterate, you move forward. You've got to make progress, build some momentum, and move from there. We believe that people work best when they do what it is that they love. People are not resources. And I know that's what the PMBOK taught you and your business books taught you. Resource is a pencil. It is a laptop. It is a thing. People are people. And as soon as we start labeling people as resources, we lose the humanity about the human. These are people with dreams and aspirations and goals and families. And so what we advise is let them do what they love and just get out of the way. We believe that doing good is worth the effort. Even if it's not profitable, even if it's not popular, even if it's not easy. In fact, most times, the most impactful work never really is. Doing good is worth the effort. It's worth the time. It's worth the rub. It's worth the late nights. And we believe that tomorrow should always be better than today. Now imagine waking up every single day and you're like, oh my God, today is gonna suck. It's gonna be awful, it's gonna be terrible. And living your life like that every single day. This belief speaks to hope and this idea that it drives us to create a world in which we wanna see. So start with your why. Also live what it is that you believe. These can't be plaques on a wall. They can't just be a tweet. They just can't be a signature. It's gotta be real. And we encourage you to be purple. What does that mean? Not only, if you've noticed, purple is our favorite color here at Fearless, right? And when I say that, it comes from this theory in this book called The Purple Cow by Seth Godin. And he talks about brown cows, right? Brown cows are kind of boring. We see brown cows all the time. They look the same. They sound the same. We get pretty good at ignoring a brown cow because it looks like the rest of the brown cows. Now, purple cows, those are amazing. Those are remarkable. It is something that will compel you to stop. It is something that will compel you to take notice and to do something different. In businesses, we've got to figure out how to be these purple cows that stand out and we're different and unique. It means not necessarily fitting in with the status quo. We've got to be different and bold with our ideas about diversity, bold with our ideas about inclusion, bold with our ideas about the products and services that we apply. We've got to stand out. And we start doing this and we're working and we're moving and we're winning deals at Fearless and we're winning awards, and something happened. Life seems to get in the way of that sometimes. And so COVID hits. COVID hits and we saw a sprinkling of this early in this calendar year, and then come March, most of the United States was on some sort of stay-at-home order and lockdown. Offices are closed, schools are closed, everyone is struggling, the economy is starting to tank, businesses are going under, and people are really struggling. And oftentimes we feel like we think about how disconnected we are and how different we are, but keep this in mind, all of this, the whole world came to a standstill off of one person that had one virus. It just speaks to how connected we all are. But we saw so many glimpses of hope and so many positive things about people building empathy and caring for one another and moving forward. And so as if that wasn't enough, the world stops again. On May 25th, George Floyd was murdered live on camera as an officer had a knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. For 8 minutes and 46 seconds, this man begged for his life. And again, as if it didn't just happen a couple months earlier, the entire world seemed to stop. Protests erupted around the country. People were talking about reform and new policy and how to get back. And everyone was slapping a Black Lives Matter tagline on their website and their tweets. And something about this just felt different. It felt like we had to approach this conversation a little differently than we had before. And we saw people rising up and people were making change, and we're figuring out how to do this at Fearless and how we can have these tough conversations internally. And we're sharing our playbook with people externally and talking to other companies and advising them and supporting them and how we can make change using technology and how we can make change in our individual organizations. And it's interesting. When we sat back and looked at it, we saw that that water was hot, right? It's boiling, and we're seeing what people are really made of. And so oftentimes people say, okay, look at the result. What do we need to do? How do we do things differently? And I say, if you don't like what you see about your organization, right? It's like a tea bag in a teapot, right? You boil it. If you don't like what you're saying, you got to change the tea bag. It's your DNA. It's what's on the inside, which is why the why becomes so important. What drives you as a person, what drives you as a human, what makes you tick, what drives your organization. When things get hot and when things get uncomfortable, that is what you will fall back on. That is who you are, and that's who you become. There's a saying that says, you can't get apples from a peach tree, right? Whatever you grow, whatever the seed is, that's what's going to grow. And so if you want to get a different product and different result, you've got to do something different. You have to be different. And so it becomes with internal change of not just, hey, how do we give back and how do we support and how do we make a donation, but the lasting change within your organization and what you have to do to transform yourself first, and then transform your organization from a very deep and personal and meaningful way. And so I know this conversation is about diversity and inclusion and what are the tips and what are the tricks. And it's relatively straightforward, actually. My advice to you is approach this the same way you approach everything else. You plan it and you track it. So within our businesses and within our organizations, we do this all of the time. For us, as we're building a new application, we do some discovery work. And we talk to clients and we talk to users and we figure out what needs to be built, and we go through the design research and discovery process. We start prototyping and getting some feedback, and we got type feedback loops, and we start to execute using some sort of agile methodology and type feedback loops about what's working and what's not, and we iterate and continue to build. And then we execute. We're tracking budgets, we're tracking goals, and we're tracking perspectives. Somehow, anytime that applies to community work or something that becomes like super tough in a personal thing, such as race or religion, we seem to clam up and we don't know how to manage that. My advice is manage it the same way you manage everything else. You plan it, put it in your plans. In our strategic plan, we manage these three things: our customers, culture, and community. And we've got a plan for all of them. Our cultures are internals. We have what we call a 50-50 goal. Technologists, and in this technology space, we're often the hardest hit, where there's not enough women, there's not enough minorities, and not enough people of color within the tech space in general. So we have a goal within Fearless. By 2025, we will have 50% women and 50% minorities in our company. This isn't just something we say. We're putting resources to it. We're building partnerships. We're building pipelines. When you go to our website, you see the language, you go to our Instagram feeds, and you go to our social media, you'll see the pictures, you see representation of the people that we're trying to reach. We plan for it. We act for it. Same goes with our customer and our community. Community just doesn't become a tack on, an add-on at the end. It is a vital part of our DNA and who we are. We are not successful unless we meet goals along all of these spectrum and how we're trying to transform our city and transform our country, and ultimately the world as a whole. And so the big piece of advice is be authentic, be genuine, come from a real place, and be willing to do the work. Just like you approach any other project, just like you approach any other business deal, if you make it real, we're likely to make lots of progress in this. So I thank you for this opportunity to share with you. I'd love to take some questions now at this point.
Thank you so much, Delali, for that very powerful keynote. So we do have a couple of questions. Before even I go to the questions, I've read Simon Sinek's book, and I've also seen the video on the why, right, where he takes the example of Apple as to doesn't matter what you do, it's why you do it that's important. That's why Apple is neither a computer company, nor a phone company, nor a technology company. It's just everything.
That's right.
So thank you so much for that. So one of the questions that came in, and actually I've also seen that very recently you had posted that you have a number of murals in your office space.
Right.
Can you share a little bit more about that? And it was very, very powerful.
Yeah, so we commissioned a local muralist, Future History Now. They also were part of the Breonna Taylor mural that got a lot of attention down in Annapolis. And so for us, we were in the middle of expansion when COVID hit. And we had an opportunity to say, do we stop our expansion? Do we hold off? We decided to move forward with it anyway. And as a part of that, we really wanted to have our space, and our guidance to our brand team was like, let's create a space that community feels welcome in. They can see themselves in this space, as well as a reminder to us as to who we work for and why. And so as you go down our quarters and our hallways, you'll see maps of Baltimore City within our space. You'll see opportunities for tech and how we're infusing tech in the city and the ripples we want to make in the organization. in our conference room culminates with a mural of the skyline of Baltimore City, as well as 4 young children, 4 young Black kids. And for us, it was such a powerful sentiment for us to be able to look in and say, you know, so many of these kids don't feel like they connect, don't feel like they belong in this world. And it seems like such a far stretch for them to be in a tech space or in the business space in general. It's beyond what they see. And so we wanted them, as we have the community in our space, to be able to see themselves represented on the walls and expose them to a new world that they weren't typically used to. And also as a reminder for us that this is who we're working for. This has always been our customer, right? We may work for the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, but we're working for the beneficiary. That's our user, right? And so the people on the end are the people that we're actually working for.
That's really, really powerful. Another question that came in, and this might be in line with what you had just started. You know, your initiative on Hutch and the Digital Services Coalition, I mean, that's very innovative, where you started something, you brought startups together. By the way, TiE has a huge network of startups, so that's something they can learn from, or maybe even participate in your the initiatives that you have. Can you share, if a company like any of ours, right, if we had to go down that path and start something like that, how do we go about doing it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. I'll talk a little bit about the why and then bake into it. The reason we do those, right? We weren't paid to start the DSC, Digital Service Coalition. We weren't paid to do Hutch. In fact, we've invested into both, right? So they've cost money for us. But again, it goes back to our why, right? This world that we see, that good software powering things that matter. We are all about this movement and all about this transformation. So the first thing is, like, the push has got to be there and the why has got to be correct. And it's got to be authentic. So I'd say before you start anything, it's got to be married to what it is that you want to do as an organization, period. What you're tied to your personal beliefs. And so then it doesn't feel like work. It's a thing that you do because you're passionate about it. So that's the first piece. I say the second thing that you do is really important is, after you've defined the things that you believe in, start telling people what you believe, right? And it sounds like it's super simple, but as you start to tell people what you believe, your tribe starts to find you, right? People say, oh, I believe that too. And they start to circulate around you. And so be very vocal about what it is you believe. And you'd be surprised about the network of people that believe the same thing and they want to partner to move things forward. Once you've started to assemble your tribe and you're doing this as you go, you've got to have a couple personality types to get a new initiative off the ground. I believe you got to have someone that's the visionary that can drive it, right? Someone that's got to see a world that people don't see and help to paint the picture for them on a blank canvas. And so someone within the organization has to be able to drive that. You also have to have, like, the operation or the execution person, right? And so not only someone can't just be driving and looking and painting a picture, right? Someone's got to put, like, strong tactics and how do we do that? And what's the plan and what's the budget and how do we get there and how do we raise money? And so those pieces have to be there. And then you have to have, you know, some string of, like, administrative or support type folks, right? And so the people that are the ground, folks on the ground that can support and push the initiative forward, that want to lean in. And so when you have all of those together and a really strong vision underpinned by your why, it's very straightforward to get things off the ground.
Great. Thank you so much, Delali. I know we are out of time, but, you know, there are a few more questions that are coming in, but I will go ahead and, you know, we will make sure that, you know, we get answers back to the people who are asking the question. So thank you once again. You know, I do want to tell you that, you know, I'm personally also involved with CIT, Center for Innovative Technologies, and I believe we have some TiE board members, Rajesh Rai, who's dialed in today, and Tom Whiteman, who's actually dialed in from CIT. With all the work that you're doing with startups, maybe it would be a good idea to connect later and see how we can, you know, connect the two organizations. So once again, thank you so much for this powerful
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
it.
Thank you. Okay, I will share my screen again. Okay, with that, let me move on let me move on. First and foremost, I do want to thank all our sponsors for this event. As you all know, TiE is a not-for-profit organization. We truly cannot operate without the support of our sponsors. So here are some of our logo sponsors: AEC, InnoVentures, the Emery Group, Carson, InnoLab Consulting, Red Cedar Consulting, and Global Alliant. We do our business sponsors, you know, Fairfax County Economic Development Authority. They've been always behind us. So thank you so much. I know Juhi is probably dialed in. So thank you so much. This is a slide where, you know, they have a talent initiative going on. So if anyone is looking for a job or knows someone who's looking for a job, you can direct them to this website. We do want to thank our title sponsor, which is Bank of America. So I will invite Ashish Khosla from Bank of America to say a few words. But before that, I'll quickly play a 1-minute video that they provided us.
The racial and economic disparities that have long existed in this country have only been widened by the coronavirus and amplified by the most recent acts of injustice. People around the world are coming together with greater urgency to demand action. At Bank of America, we know we all have a role to play to overcome the very real consequences of systemic racism and inequity. This includes individuals, governments, nonprofits, and the private sector. Racial equality and economic opportunity are deeply connected. That's why Bank of America has committed $1 billion over 4 years to address critical gaps in affordable housing, access to healthcare, employment and job skills, and the resources small businesses need to succeed. We can do more, and we need to do more now to further advance racial equality and economic opportunity for all.
With that, Ashish, if you are online, if you can turn your video on, and okay, it's all yours. Ashish, I don't think we can hear you.
Hi, Manish, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
All right, apologies for the technical difficulty, folks. Thank you so much to TiE for undertaking this important event today. Bank of America is extremely proud to sponsor this D&I event for the very basic reason, because equality is really at the core of who we are. Over the past weeks and months, as the panelists just mentioned, we have come together as a company, as a community, and as a world with intensified passion for racial equality. And we recognize that we all must do more to address the real consequences of systemic racism that exists in society. Acts of inhumanity against any person or group have a profound impact on all of us. It's not enough to just say something, we must also do something. We all need to do more, and we need to do more now. As you heard in the brief video, in light of this, Bank of America has made a $1 billion 4-year commitment to advance racial equality and economic opportunity. The 4 key areas that were mentioned, small business, affordable housing, jobs, reskilling, and health. And I'm pleased to give you a quick update on what has been done so far. As of today, $300 million of the $1 billion has been earmarked as follows. $25 million is going to be for initial grant funding to support jobs initiatives. These funds will enhance upskilling and reskilling for Black and Hispanic Latino individuals through partnerships with the following schools. 11 community colleges that serve predominantly Black and Hispanic Latino students, 10 public historically Black colleges and universities, and Hispanic serving institutions. Additionally, $25 million in initial community outreach and initiatives, additional philanthropic support to underserved and minority communities that were adversely impacted by the global health and humanitarian crisis. On personal protection equipment, recently the bank has so far distributed 10 million masks, with 5 million provided in the last 60 days in communities of need. Additionally, an important component, $50 million has been allocated to direct equity investments in minority deposit institutions. Investments in MDIs will facilitate benefits to the communities they serve through lending, housing, neighborhood revitalization, and other banking services. Bank of America also operates $1.6 billion community development financial institution portfolio with 255 partners, CDFIs across 50 states, providing access to capital to thousands of individuals and small businesses who do not qualify through traditional lenders. And Manish, you just mentioned CIT. I think this next part will interest you and others. $200 million out of the $300 million has been allocated to direct equity investments in minority entrepreneurs, businesses, and funds. Bank of America plans to make direct equity investments in Black and Hispanic-owned businesses to help supply growth capital, as well as to invest substantially in programs to create future entrepreneurs. These investments so far, $300 million, I think will make a huge impact on the communities. And again, I just want to say thank you to TiE, the management board, all of the members for recognizing this important issue, and we're fully supportive. Thank you, Manish.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ashish. So moving on, let me introduce you to Sumit Srivastav. Sumit, if you can turn on your video. Yeah, you have. So Sumit is a colleague of ours, TiE DC board member. He's also the CEO of Array Information Technology. Array Information is also a panel sponsor for today. So thank you so much for that support, Sumit. So with that, Sumit is going to go through the panel discussion. We have an excellent panel planned for you today. So I'll let Sumit take it from here. Go ahead, Sumit.
Great. Thank you. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. All right. Well, thank you, Manish. And thank you, everyone, for joining us for this panel. Delali, appreciate the comments, and thank you for that. So we pulled together a pretty incredible array of leaders who've all had and continue to have significant impact on really our national and global technology industry. And so our hope is, and our expectation is, through this discussion and their experiences, I think you're going to hear some real actionable ways to drive a more diverse and inclusive culture for your organizations. Inevitably, that not only strengthens and improves your own organization's performance, as we know, but will also continue to have significant impact in our communities. And I think certainly an uplifting force for our society. It's a role of business that I think is very important. Delali obviously spoke to that too. For just logistics for this panel, we will have some pre-planned questions that touch on leadership and strategy, operations, talent acquisition, and community engagement. However, we are leaving plenty of time for Q&A. So for the audience, please start posting your questions now, and we'll look to answer as many of those as we can. I know that a lot of you already have probably read the detailed bios of the panelists, but as part of the introduction, I want to just start with a brief intro for each panelist, and then we'll start the questioning. First, we have Marilyn Crowther, who has over 30 years of experience in the IT industry. Prior to starting her current consulting business, she led HP's Enterprise Services $3 billion US public sector business and played a pivotal role in the merger of HP, ES, and Computer Sciences Corporation, which created DXC Technology, where she was then named the SVP and GM for DXC's US public sector. She currently sits on the board of ICF International and is also on Virginia's Center for Innovative Technology board. Next, we have Joe Beal. Joe has more than 20 years of experience in the IT and cybersecurity domain. He's a managing director in cybersecurity SME at Accenture Federal Services. He came to Accenture via their acquisition of Defense Point Security, where Joe was brought in as president to help in executing their exit strategy. Our next panelist is Karoom Brown. Karoom is the Chief Growth Officer at OptumServe, the federal health services business of Optum and United Health Group. He's also the CEO of OptumServe Technology Services, which is the health IT subsidiary of OptumServe. Prior to that, he was the SVP of Business Development and Strategy at Leidos Health, which included the 2016 merger with Lockheed Martin's IS and GS line of business. He also serves on the leadership committee of the Paralyzed Veterans of America and is on the board of trustees for the Orlando Science Center. And finally, I'd like to introduce Hannibal Jackson. Hannibal is the president and CEO of YTech, an award-winning small business government contractor. In 2018, YTech was ranked the 4th fastest growing business in the nation, led by an African-American CEO. He was recognized in 2019 as George Mason University's Distinguished Black Alumni and sits on the advisory board for the university's Center for Government Contracting. So with that, hopefully all of you have your videos on, and we can get rolling with the first question. This is a question I have for really all the panelists. And so if you could take a minute or two to just thinking about your career and the various systemic and structural issues that you face, I'd like you to speak maybe to a moment early in your career where a person, organization, or an environment really gave you the opportunity you needed to push forward. And if you can, why or how it did. Marilyn, would you like to go first?
Sure, thank you. So I started my career in accounting, and I would say I was ambitious and always gave it my best effort. But my priority was really honoring God first and starting a family and then excelling in my career. I share this because we often feel like we have to sacrifice it all to be successful. But what I found that worked for me best was to be true to myself. Because it was so important for my psyche and my sanity, actually. So during the first 5 to 6 years of my career, I got married, we had our first child, And then I went back to work part-time. And a lot of the people said, as a female coming back part-time, nobody's going to really take you serious. And so I kind of thought about that and I said, okay, I'll deal with that, cross that bridge when I get there. And I did a part-time job share with another new mom, and we both worked 20 hours a week. And what my manager ended up telling both of us is that she got more work out of us in 20 hours than she did out of some of the people that were there full day for 40. And she was one of the managers that encouraged me to apply for the accounting financial development leadership program that our company had at the time. Well, when it came time to apply, I was pregnant, and the male VP in charge of the program told me at the end of the interest meeting that although I was ambitious and quite promising, I was neither flexible nor mobile in my condition. And yes, I was very frustrated, but I decided to study the career path of several of the executives of the company and map out my own development program. I did not need him to do that for me. So I stayed current on all the relevant business and industry issues, as well as all of the accounting issues. And within a couple of years, of course, I was pregnant again with my second child. And unfortunately, I had to go on bed rest, and it turned out to be 6 months. And it was a very difficult time. I was a new team leader. I wanted to stay connected to my team. I was worried about, not being able to come back to my job and all of those things. I had a terrific 2-year-old at the time that needed my attention. And I would say by divine intervention, the lady that I was working for had gone through a similar experience, and she was very supportive, which allowed me to not worry so much about whether or not I had a job or a team to come back to. And when I returned, my team was still there and my job was still there. Somehow the work never goes away. When I returned, we jumped right back in. We partnered with the business. We structured winning deals. We were working with the internal, external auditors as a financial liaison, and we did an awesome job. And it was recognized by a number of people across the company. And one of the managers that I was working for got promoted to strategic business unit controller, and he asked me to come over as one of his finance managers. So in my case, it was 2 people, an organization and an environment. And the people were Lisa Hanks-Lillard. She allowed me to really play my role as a team lead. She stepped in and answered questions for the team while I wasn't there, and held my position until I came back. And then when I returned to work, David Croxville was the one that tapped me on the shoulder for my true first management position. And that's kind of how my career took off. EDS Finance Organization overall provided an amazing training ground that allowed people to transfer throughout the organization, both in the US and abroad, and to gain invaluable experiences. And then EDS, the culture and the environment itself was really all about teamwork. It was about collaboration. It was about recognizing individuals for the strength that they brought to the table. And it was respecting the diversity that you had, whether it was diverse skill, diverse ethnicity, truly embracing. One of the courses that I took as an early leader was The Color of Fear, and it touched on so many things. And so in my case, it was a person, it was an environment, and it was an organization. And I'm excited about the opportunity that is before us right now, because these are dire times, crisis times, but all of the experiences that we've learned over the years, it's time to put it to work.
Absolutely. That's great. Thank you. Karoom?
Hello, how are you? I have so many examples, but I want to start back on what really launched me, because I think where I've been is a product of where I'm at today. So I came from a big family, 11 brothers and sisters growing up in New York. My dad was a veteran, but a single working parent. My mother stayed home with all of us, and when my dad worked, so most of us worked early. I worked every year from the age of 9, from paper routes to fast food restaurants. But roughly about 17 years old in 11th grade, I decided to move out on my own and see if I could do good by myself. And I put myself through the rest of high school, went on to college, but in college, I was forced to work full time. So I had an opportunity where I was able to test into a company at that time called Lucent Technologies, known as Avaya today. But I tested in it, scored very high, and I was the youngest person, but also the only African American one to pass that test in the New England area. So I had 375 technicians. I was the only one under 35, and I was the only one that was minority, working in the New England area where I was going to school in Rhode Island. So didn't think anything of it at the time. Growing up in New York, we were a little bit more diverse and didn't have some of the struggles I seen in the New England area. Fast forward to, I wanted to prove that I could go to school at the same time and deliver like my peers, and I quickly started to outpace my peers. What I didn't realize in the union, there were certain protocols about how much you work so that the union still got overtime. So I was doing what the average person did in a 12-hour day with overtime in about 6 hours. That resulted in my boss getting a lot of nasty notes on his desk that at that time there was something called affirmative action. So they would, my nickname became, and this was amongst my union peers, but my nickname became Affirmative. And they were like, you better get Affirmative out of here. If he doesn't stop eating into our overtime, we're gonna get him out of here. They put Negro Lover on my boss's desk, things like that. So this was all new to me, and I didn't know how to handle it. And the feeling I felt was that, my results should have spoke, but they felt because of the color of my skin is the only reason why I was the one younger Black one that actually got to have the job. So that set me on a path to never let anyone be able to say that I'm there because of the color of my skin. I'm there because of some affirmative action. And what I wanted to do was hands down be the best, be the smartest, be the hardest working, and let my results carry me. And that really set me on a path to, one, look at the workforce differently, how I manage my workforce today, how I encourage leaders and the enterprises that I've worked for, how they can do better, how they can see better. It's also changed my aspect on diversity and inclusion, how I push the enterprises that I'm a part of, and what I do with myself, which is continuously learn. And a lot of organizations don't kind of think that diversity and inclusion is checking a box, or how many minorities I hire. Do I have enough Black and white? And Black and white is one aspect, but race is only one aspect of diversity and inclusion. And I'll give you some examples, especially for the entrepreneur community that are growing organizations. It's very easy to get caught up in looking at diversity and inclusion as simple as white and Black. Do I have enough white, Black, women, and males on my team? And it's much more than that. Diversity comes in all shape, forms, and fashion. Inclusion comes in shape, forms, and fashion. So as a minority leader a few years ago, I realized that I wasn't being inclusive enough to my team. I came into staff meetings. I gave a lot of sports analogies. Well, I wasn't being inclusive to the folks on my team that didn't watch sports. I learned not too long ago, and this was just this year, that when I take the team out for a happy hour, I'm not being inclusive to those that don't drink and those that are recovering alcoholics. How could I dare bring them into a bar? That's not being inclusive. That's not thinking about those type of activities. Or if I invite everybody to Topgolf, is that inclusive to everybody on my team that may not be interested in golf? So things of that nature, just as simple as, the executive that sends out an email at the end of the year that says, I'm wishing everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Wait a minute, well, everybody doesn't celebrate Christmas. And it'd be easier and more inclusive if you said Happy Holidays. So those things, the little things that the unforgotten population within your organization. So the same way diversity and inclusion, I give examples, discrimination or stereotyping. A lot of people do it and just don't realize they do it. That unconscious bias, right after 9/11, minorities, especially Black folks, say, oh, yeah, we're treated unfairly. But there's a lot of minorities that when a Middle Eastern descent person got up on a plane and walked towards the bathroom, got nervous after 9/11. Well, that person could have been a Hindu from India, nothing to do with a radical Muslim or anything like that. But because, we watch the news, we watch the media, but we don't take the time to learn facts, and we don't take the time to understand. And one of the things that I'll leave you with, and I know I've been talking a lot, but I want to leave you all with, is take the time to look at facts and understand and talk to people. You can't be truly diverse and inclusive if you don't take the time to understand everyone's perspective. Doesn't matter if you don't agree. Doesn't matter if you're a different religion. Doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat. Everyone is entitled to their own beliefs. But what will make the world better and make us more diverse and inclusive if you take the time to understand how people feel, understand when they think, so you can take their perspectives into consideration and you can treat them as one of the team and one of equal, even though they have different beliefs and different opinions. So I'll leave you with that. That's some of the things I've learned, but my past and my background has helped lead me to try harder and realize that even today I can still learn how to be more diverse and more inclusive in my organization. And it's beyond the basic things that you may see on the news and media. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for that. Joe, you want to go next?
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. I think as I talk about my path, it has to be based on the mentors that come before me, right? Never discount a mentor, a person that you can talk to kind of show your path and see where your path is leading. One of my great mentors that I always talk about is Mel Fulton. He was one of the principals over at Booz Allen for years, became a BA senior vice president, but he taught me a lot of things, and it's a funny story. My path was a little different. I went the network route and got thrown a firewall in the early 90s, right, late 90s, working as an intern while I was still going to school at Mason. But one of the greatest things that Mel ever taught me was there's a difference between diversity and inclusion. Diversity to me is a number, it's a percentage. Inclusion is bringing and exposing the people below you, bringing somebody up from the bottom, bringing up people that you see as superstars that look like you, that have the same type of cultural and moral values as you, bringing them along with you. If you look at a lot of the websites today, and since I'm in the cyberspace, I'll be specific to that. You look at the leaders, or you look at the About Us page on those websites, and a lot of times you don't see any of us. And it's I would say it's not on purpose, but I always think carpe diem, seizing the day, and my path was just that. Take every opportunity I could to get to where I needed to be, and my path to get at the table ended in me creating my own. And saying that is specific to everything you all are doing as entrepreneurs, and being who you are and true to yourself, but being deliberate in your actions and being true to your core competencies is what has made me successful. And most importantly, taking care of the people, the talent that you have, right? They aren't replaceable. And when we talk about inclusion, we're talking about exposure to things that oftentimes we don't get exposed to unless we started ourselves or companies. Lolly said a great point, right? He was saying that as you look across the board for all these organizations, you almost have to start yourself to be included in the things that you want to do. For example, they're not sharing the financials with us at times. They're not allowing us to see certain aspects of the business. All as technical practitioners, we know and understand how to do our job, but when it gets to the point where it's time to make that business decision, we often sit back in the shadows, or we're scared to take on different aspects of roles that we believe that we may not be qualified for, right? And that's in our eyes, and that's how we have to almost reprogram ourselves. And staying true to you and making yourself, most importantly, uncomfortable is that carpe diem space, seize the day. And back to my path, I started out in the networking space. I was at WorldCom and kind of ran through a couple other organizations, Case, and got thrown this little firewall, and back then cyber was DNS record changes and access lists for small or SOHO firewalls, and sometimes black hole routing, BGP, right? But as this market came up and as we started to look at where I was going eventually, helping DPS, and Samik was right, I kind of came on to DPS in 2014 prior to our acquisition. But I saw George and the team come to me, and I gave them the first contract when we first started this whole thing at DHS. But we saw very early that culture and passion, intellect meant everything, right? Your culture defines you as a business. And oftentimes the hardest thing to do as an entrepreneur is to take the company that's you and the brand and kind of expose that to other areas. So every time you walk in an office, it's not just you and your customers looking for you. Your company does live and breathe on its own, and staying deliberate with what you do from a standpoint of your core values, your core competencies, and taking care of your people is really the conversation we're having today, where culture is everything. And I also would like to flip this. This should be an inclusion and diversity conversation, not diversity and inclusion. We need to be included, and we need to bring the people up with us, or those superstars that you see, and give them an opportunity. And if we all do that, pick 1, 2, or 3, you'll see the expansion of what we do, the breadth of where we are as a community kind of explode.
Absolutely. Thanks, Joe. All right, Hannibal, opening statement.
Well, thanks for having me, Samit, TiE, DC, and Manish. And before I talk about the specific person, I just want to talk about the systemic and structural issues that we talk about. So one example, and I don't think they really talk about it in school today, is redlining. So redlining was banned in 1968, but that when you think about it, you're only talking about 52 years ago. That still impacts Blacks today. So what redlining is for those that don't understand, was when banks in the real estate industry got together and literally drew red ink on a map. And if you could only live, if you were Black, you could only live inside this territory, but the loans were considered more risky and banks were less likely to give you a loan and businesses were less likely to relocate or invest in your community. So according to the Federal Reserve today, the net worth of the typical white family is 10 times greater than that of a Black family. So why do we bring that up? Because most Americans generate their wealth through real estate. So homes in Black neighborhoods have historically been devalued, which also means that you have a lower tax base, which also has a trickle-down effect because less tax dollars means less money for schools, which means fewer qualified teachers. This then in turn has a trickle-down effect on the graduation rate, which then leads to the discussion of the school-to-prison pipeline. So having access to a quality education is one of the biggest civil rights issues today, because a quality education is only one way to pull yourself up out of poverty. And unfortunately today, the quality of education is determined by your zip code. And it shouldn't be that way. The kids that live in the inner city of DC or the suburbs of Fairfax County or even in the Appalachians should all be afforded the same opportunity to a quality education. So I say that to say, because when you're trying to start a business, you need capital or you need some type of valuable asset as collateral. If your home isn't worth much, or you live in a certain neighborhood, or you don't have an inheritance, which most of us don't grow up having, how do you get that collateral or asset to go and start your business? You know, so for us as a minority entrepreneurs, we have a responsibility to give back. And this leads me to my point, is that for me, I was blessed to have a mentor by the name of Greg and Kathy Freeland. And I think Kathy had spoke with TiE on the Women Entrepreneurs Network. I think you guys had an event a few weeks back. And it didn't start off like that. I mean, obviously I went to go brief her. You know, I was 20-something years old. It was the first time, honestly, I'd ever met a Black CEO in my life. So one, I was shocked because I had never seen anybody look like us run their own business. You know, she asked me what I want to do. And I kind of remember saying, hey, I wanted to build an IT company, but I couldn't really specifically hone in, and it goes back to what Delali was saying earlier about the why. The meeting ended pretty quickly, and I just figured I blew it. You know, I had waited all my life to finally get in front of somebody to tell them I wanted to start a business. And literally the meeting was over after 5 minutes because she said, hey, I'd love to help you, but I can't build it for you. When you figure out what you want to do, come back. 2 to 3 years later, we ran into each other again at church. Luckily, you know, I don't believe in coincidence. God had us sit at the same table. She had asked me, how's business going? At that point, we had done about $1.2 million in revenue. It wasn't great, but she saw that we still kept plugging along, and we never gave up. We had a top secret cleared facility. We were doing okay. At that point, we decided to sit down and engage into a more further or a deeper relationship. And ultimately, they decided to give us a seed money to help us scale the business. And we paid them back. And to this day, I still love her dearly. And I think she's been very critical to us having some of the success that we had. And again, for me, you know, I think that representation matters. I mean, I'm honored to be on the panel with all the folks today. Because again, as a young man growing up, my father grew up in DC. I'm the first one in my family to graduate from high school. We had never seen somebody who looked like us or even believed that that was real. You know, my mother is from South Korea. She never graduated high school. So when we came back to the States, you know, it was difficult. And so now, like I said, me being in this position, there's a sense of responsibility that I have to pull my other fellow brothers and sisters up. And, you know, nowadays, it's funny because when I was first starting the business, I couldn't get a bank to loan me the money. So that's why I ended up going to Kathy and Greg. Now I don't have a problem with the banks coming in. In fact, they call me too often because when you start doing well, then they want the relationship. And I think that loyalty and that trust goes a long way. So just a shout out again to the Freelands, thank you for your blessing, and I'll continue to pay it forward.
Thank you, Hannibal. I know I've heard that story before, and it's always uplifting. So I appreciate that. Great. So I wanted to make sure everybody at least got a little bit of taste of what, the 4 of your journeys and whatnot. So I'm going to maybe go down through a couple of topics that actually have been touched upon a little bit. And Karoom, I'm going to have the first one come to you. We've heard actually quite a bit now through the various comments about community engagement, certainly Ashish's Bank of America commitment. United Health and the family of companies made some pretty significant commitments earlier this summer on the heels of the protests on the death of George Floyd. And as I looked into it further, I saw this consistent focus of your organization and the whole company on everything from encouraging community service, and even recently saw the commitment for those communities impacted by the Western wildfires. Can you speak a little bit to the strategy and leadership efforts that are in play within United Health and the family of companies that you see drive this kind of culture all the way down to, it looks like, grassroots employee levels?
Absolutely. Well, I sit on one of the committees. I sit on our Inclusion and Diversity Committee, and one of the things that we talked about this year, especially on the heels of the unfortunate death of George Floyd, we looked at it, and some of the normal things came up, especially as we looked at COVID. When you look at health disparities, and said, hey, how do we solve for something big, like heart disease in the Black population? And I said, we can't always try to swing for the grand slam. Solving heart disease today is going to be a harder part. What can we do today? How do we start making an impact? And I think not just myself, but some of the other executives of companies start to look at more impactful short-term initiatives versus just, cutting a check to Wounded Warriors and going about our day. So looking across the board, we have been rolling out more impactful short-term and long-term support. So, not just donating money to George Floyd's family, but donating money for education and scholarships for his family, but also starting to fund in support of that. When we looked at COVID, we could have just did, donated money, but we said, hey, we're going to target minority communities across the country that are hot zones, from Orleans Parish to Bronx, New York, Miami-Dade County we're rolling into now, where we have a program called Stop COVID. And it's not just where we're giving free testing in those neighborhoods, but what we're also doing is we're giving free healthcare consulting advice, we're giving out free food, we're giving out things that the community actually needs and can use today, not just tomorrow. So as we start to roll out more internally, we just rolled out a $400 million health disparities and diversity and inclusion initiative, where we're really, and we put a panel in charge of making sure that money is just not a big check cut somewhere, but it's actually making an impact real time in the communities today, that is going to have a long-term effect on healthcare going forward. So really looking at how do we understand the problems more, how do we understand by talking, but also how do we make more impact beyond the check, and real time. The fires are today, the social unrest is today, the devastation to families like George Floyd is today. So, and it won't stop there, and just in my group alone, we're doing a lot with the minority community, but also the veteran community as well. So just looking at how do we make impact real, other than where you see a lot of enterprise organizations that kind of send the check in the mail and then go about their day. But from an employee standpoint, we're trying to figure out how we roll up our sleeves and set that example across the business at multiple different levels, and also keep the conversation going, where we're giving back to the nation and the world beyond just what you've seen in the past. Our executive is coming, one of our top executives is coming back from taking over and leading the WHO organization to help out with COVID. But he'll be coming back hopefully in the next couple of months back to his day job. But those are the kind of things we really, from the I&D committee, are pushing with our board, our C-levels, our executive suite across the United Group enterprise to say, let's do more. And how do we do more? and then not just having a high-level meeting about it, but actually bringing them examples on what more looks like. And so far, when we bring those examples forward, we've been getting amazing and complete support from the enterprise on approach and philanthropy and support to the community in a different way.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you. Marilyn, I want to turn to you, and it's actually just building off of what Karim just mentioned, and you actually referred to EDS and sort of the culture and things that were set, the leadership tone. We all agree leadership and has to set the tone. Can you speak to some of the things that you saw as sort of specific processes or sort of attributes of the environment that really translated to that culture and employees wanting to engage and be part of the community?
Yeah, absolutely. As it relates to diversity and inclusion, let me just first say that we have to stop treating diversity and inclusion like it's a standalone separate mission and embed it in everything that we do. Make it an imperative, make it foundational. Diversity and inclusion goes hand in hand with being honest with yourself and with others, having integrity and treating everyone with respect as a part of this human race. And as Delali said, understanding that every individual matters. Every one of the individuals matter on the team. D&I should be included as part of the plan, and it should be included as a part of the relevant metrics. And so I go to the 5 key things that makes anything successful, whether we're talking about revenue and profit goals or the like, is share your vision and the goals for the organization, but more importantly, set clear expectations. Executives identify clients, sales have to go and meet with the clients and sell the service, operations has to deliver the service, an accounts receivable person has to bill it, the account leader has to ensure that collections and cash flow comes in. So in that whole target process, revenue, profit, target, receivables, cash flow, everybody in the company has a role to play. But when they understand their role, when they understand that I just can't bill anytime I want to, I have to bill on the last day or shortly thereafter, give it 30 days to pay, then your cash comes in the door. If they understand how important their role is, then they're more apt to make sure it gets done timely. And then number 2, I would say, arm leaders and employees with the tools and resources necessary to be successful. I used to always say disarm, can't, and wait. Those are like 2 cuss words for me. You don't tell your leader, I can't make my revenue and profit targets this year. I tried, but it was so hard. My target was too big. I just couldn't get there from here. I couldn't get the right resources. I couldn't hire the right number of clear personnel. Nope, you go figure out how to make it happen. You subcontract, you bring on college folks early and put them in the pipeline and get the clearance process started. You find creative ways to do what's important to you. And you don't go tell your leader, I almost won the contract, but I was waiting on BD to write me the winning proposal. Nope, if BD is not doing what they're supposed to do, you redirect them or you fire them. I mean, let's just be real about it, right? And of course, we've always heard inspect and measure what you expect. So I always call this trust with verification. Trust that the team will get it done. Don't doubt it. Set a tone and an expectation for victory. As a leader, I don't want to know how hard your job is, really, or how tough the goal is. All I want to know is what you're doing to make it happen. It's okay to identify and note what the obstacles are, but in the same breath, tell me how you're going to eliminate those obstacles. Remove if and talk about when. And so, those are can't and wait and if and when, you have to think about how you use those. I always tell people it's okay for can't and wait to be in your vocabulary as long as they're together. I can't wait to meet my target. I can't wait to hire that resource, but not separately on standalone basis. And then reward real achievements. Not efforts, real achievements. You get what you pay for or what you incentivize. Whether you're talking about salary or bonus, if you're not getting what you're paying for, then something's wrong and you need to do something. And at the end of the day, I always say, if you can't change the people, change the people. If you can't change the people, if you've done all those things, you set clear targets, you told them what you expect, you measure and inspect, you coach, you mentored, you've rewarded, you've set the right carrots in place. If you can't change the people and do it quickly. Once you've determined that they're not capable of getting the job done, then allow them the opportunity to go be successful somewhere else. And those are just the real hard facts. So, I thank you for saying, people, organization, and culture are important. And I think Joe was saying that, from the standpoint of culture, it's really as good as your word. Your culture from a company standpoint is what you're all about, and it's what people buy into and what they believe in.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So you mentioned Joe. I'm going to transition, Joe, to you. So we were just talking about people, and I know you've had this interesting last 4 or 5 years where you've spent time in a pretty emerging high-tech space. Obviously, it's something that a lot of our listening audience is going to want to is also dealing with. Both from the sort of small, medium-sized business of DPS and then how it transitioned into Accenture. And we know the tech industry has always had sort of an issue with underrepresentation of certain communities. Can you speak a little bit to, the talent acquisition practices and successes or ways that you tried to address that as part of both organizations, the small and the large?
Absolutely. So before I say that, for everyone on the call, replay what Marilyn said. Those are the keys to success for an organization, as well as embedding yourself and preparing yourself to be purchased or to purchase another organization. But moving from DPS, I think as you look at the cyber domain in totality, it's very small. We made a great point in at the time when we felt that cyber was ready to hit, and I kind of transitioned over. We knew 3 things, and that's something you should always keep in mind: knowing your market, knowing your expertise, and knowing where you fit in from an actual standpoint of who you sell to, how they buy it, and then what they want in the future. You should always have a 3-pronged plan, 5 years out, and be ready. We knew that the market conditions for our sale were advantageous to us. EBITDA was about a 2.0. Our discounted cash flows were at a point where we had enough vehicles to sustain that. And we also knew we had our most important piece of this was the people. And oftentimes, if you look from a minority standpoint, we're doing all the work, but we're getting none of the glory. And it behooves you as a leader to pull those people out that are in the trenches. Once we sold DPS, we sold it for 2 reasons. And that was our culture aligned with Accenture, 1, and 2, the market for cyber was so lean that there were a lot of cyber professionals out there, but at the time there weren't enough focused cyber professionals in the areas that were expanding across the market. And as we moved into Accenture, we saw very quickly that behemoth can overtake you, right? And so we set out to do 2 things. 1, we wanted to control the attrition as we were moving in and moving over. So that means taking care of your people, put things in place to make sure that if you are going to sell your business or in the process of selling your business, that you leave something behind for your folks, because at the end of the day, you are no company without the people you have. 2, it was making sure that you kind of had a premise of your moral values, right? Ours were passion, intellect, and loyalty. Intellect is probably a strange one to say, but the passion was you needed to feed your people, right? They love it. They want to do good work. They want work that they can do that kind of pushes them. And they want to do different things at different times. The intellect piece was making sure that you gave your folks the avenue to continue to push themselves, to hone their skills. Oftentimes, especially in the cyber arena, it's a challenge to keep good talent. And it's not about a raise. It's not about stock options. It's about giving them the training they want and knowing that they have a place that they feel safe in and that you'll go to bat for them, regardless of who comes across. And then your clients. A lot of times, as a leader, you're in those hard conversations. In those conversations where you can make or break a contract, where at times you may want to walk away. You may be in an option year that's lasted for 14 months, and you're in a situation where you want to keep your people in play, but you also want to do right by your client. Keeping your client first, doing good by your business, and also protecting your people were the 3 keys for us. But most importantly, every year, And it came on the cycle this year, which was key for me. Accenture made about a $300 million investment in making sure that we had I&D and making sure that we would actually bring and pull the leaders, and those are managing directors or above, the quote unquote partners of the organization, having them look more like the folks that we have on this panel, which I'm honored to be on, by the way. So in the next 3 years, to that point, we plan to go 50-50, right? And the most important thing is that as you look, and as we've looked across the horizon for the teams, I&D can't be, oh, okay, just because they look like this, they got promoted. You have to promote the right people. You have to understand the people are ready to get promoted, they will be, but also give them a voice. And that's something we haven't had. And at DPS, we made sure that all those individuals had a voice. And that's key, especially as you get in, and even as you look through your annual performance reviews for your companies, and looking at the folks that may be low performers, mid performers, or high performers, there are a lot of folks that are kind of left in the wind, right? And they're doing great jobs. Sometimes they're fatigued at the jobs they're doing. To pull them out and kind of evolve them. And a lot of times people will do what is asked, right? And I think that our hardest challenge was, as we moved into what Accenture was mapping to a culture where cyber was a capability, which were market-focused, capability-driven, but taking that capability and creating that brain trust, so to speak, or that community was key to us. And I think that's why we've been successful so far. Protecting the people, making sure you hone their skills, making sure the loyalty remains from you as a leader to not only your customer in the bottom line, but also to your people was key.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you, Joe. Boy, you guys are just naturally leaning into the next question, which is great. And then I know we'll take some audience questions. We have a few, and I'll definitely try to get to one. Hannibal, Joe was just talking about, the acquisition of personnel and how you do the talent acquisition strategy. One of the things I know that a lot of people say, hey, I can't find the right person, or I don't know, how to go, that their networks don't naturally connect them to the broader communities. Can you speak a little bit to, what you see as good avenues? I know you and I have chatted often about the various things that you've done to help organizations find and expand the aperture of how they go pull in not just the technical talent, but really your future management and leadership talent also.
Well, I think they've all set me up because they're tough acts to follow for sure. So, as a small GovCon firm in the area, I don't have any specific sources per se. As you said, a lot of my sources and outreach have been through military. I served in the military for 8 years in the Signal Corps and in counterintelligence, through my church, through George Mason, from the undergrad perspective, Maryland from the grad school perspective, and through my fraternity. And so, as you said, as you know, most business, especially in this area and in GovCon, is built on relationships. It's not about how technical you are or how innovative your company is. It's who you know, because people tend to do business with people they know and they trust. So for me, a lot of times that's who I reach out to first, whether it's a professional relationship or a personal relationship. Like I may call you and say, hey, do you have an idea? I'm looking for a CFO. Do you know anybody on the market? You may not know anybody specifically, but you may know another organization that a CFO has recently left that you can refer to me, and I'm more likely to hire that person based on your personal relationship with them and my personal relationship with you. I think sometimes we do have to be careful though, because that sometimes you end up with a homogenous environment, because sometimes, depending on who you socialize with, everybody can begin to look like you and think like you, because we tend to socialize in that aspect. So I think, to go back to the whole diversity thing, I think, you have to embrace the case for diversity, and it has to start at the top. You have to realize the value that it brings to your organization. Embracing people's differences, how it can boost innovation, how it can improve your customer experiences, how it can also help you gain a competitive advantage, because it leads to broader perspectives, different beliefs and ideas that you can leverage, leading to better problem solving and information gathering. The CEO must walk the walk. I think Delali mentioned that earlier. It has to be visible to the people in the organization. It can't just be this catchphrase that, we want to be diverse and that's it. It has to be actionable. They have to see it. It has to be tangible. They have to be willing to understand and touch it. As a CEO, I think you have to be introspective. We have to be looking at our own biases and blind spot. And I think Karoom mentioned that earlier. I'm a big sports fan as well. And I didn't even think about it because if I'm using an analogy about sports, most people don't like sports the way I like sports. So, you know, you have to think about that in the grand scheme of things because you can make other people feel uncomfortable. And so we have to be humble enough to realize and create a safe space for others so that they can feel like they can contribute and be a part of the team. The one thing I've learned over the years of being an entrepreneur is that there's never one person that can do the job. There are multiple people that are qualified. We just have to do the work and the due diligence to go out there and seek them. And a lot of times I think people will just take the lazy way out and just say, hey, I've looked at 3 or 4 candidates, I've hired the best person. And that may not be that case in every instance. And so, you know, like I said, I know initially you had talked about different sources. Again, I don't have any specific sources. I've used headhunters before. I've never had any success with them. Typically, like I said, because most business is built on trust, I typically reach out to my personal network, and I found that's been very effective for us so far.
Well, no, thank you. And frankly, I tell everybody that's listening, this is your new network.
I just want to add to that something, just something to think about for everybody, especially, you know, I like Joe work in a big enterprise, and Joe said something that I just want to pull a thread on about pulling folks forward. It's okay to build a pipeline. Sometimes the best talent is within, but just because they work for you doesn't mean that they're getting the mentoring, the tutelage they need to move up to the next level, so you don't have to look out internally. But that doesn't just mean say, hey, work harder. You actually have to build a pipeline, come up with a plan to mature that person, and sit back and say, okay, Joe Smith is 2 years out from being promoted to the next level, and then holding that person's manager accountable for training and providing the exposure and what those individuals need to move to the next level, whether it's in a small company, but especially in enterprises like this. So one of the things I've been accustomed to, and I'm pushing here hard where I'm at, is building that pipeline and then staying true to maturing that pipeline of employees that are within the company that just need the opportunity and the right training and exposure. So I throw that out there. It's one, to have sources externally to the company, and it's another thing to also have a pipeline within that you mature and have that thoughtful process in which you mature that talent, and maybe quarterly, couple of times a year, you're reviewing with your HR staff and your managers. Okay, what's the status of maturing that pipeline of talent to the next level? Just wanted to make sure I got that out there, because it's a practice that works when the leadership team is part of that plan and pushes that plan forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm I know we're running out of time. One question, Manish has told me I can throw one question out, but the beauty of the question, and I think I'm actually encouraged by there are 2 questions that have come in, and they're both long-term views, which is great. So, you know, people not just thinking about what can I do in my company right now, but how can my business engage in the community? And they're both about, effectively, I'm going to try to combine them. We had a prep question that had dealt with community colleges and the national movement towards community colleges, which are more affordable and more accessible in many cases. And we have a local, scenario with what Northern Virginia Community College did with George Mason. The 2 questions have actually come in around the quality education in their inner city school systems, and how do we take, and how can businesses be more participative, and what have people seen? And Delali, if you're still on too, would love your inputs to help uplift those communities and to provide, investments, whatever methods you guys have seen work, employees who are kind of giving back. But can anybody want to comment on that in terms of the long-term need to business and communities to engage on the education side?
So I'll add that I think that is a big need. I'm pushing it on my side. How do we find partnerships, not just with the community colleges, but historically Black colleges, also in certain professions? So I have the unique pleasure of serving across multiple different streams, IT and healthcare, health services. So right now, in our initiative to support COVID testing and get ready to maybe support rolling out the vaccine, we're reaching out to community colleges, nursing schools, throughout all communities, but in particular, especially underserved communities, and seeing how we can get out in front of that, saying, okay, let us know your nurses, your clinicians that are 3, 6, 9, 12 months out, because we can put them in play now and train them now, and making those programs long lasting. So, yes, a lot of organizations don't form the right or enough partnerships. Sometimes if you're a Maryland-based enterprise, you'll form allegiance with Maryland University and then you're done. It doesn't stop there. You need to be a national provider, and especially in the day of age of virtual, you can hire folks from around the country to support. And so on our side, and what I'm doing is just expanding the community colleges, the minority colleges, but also colleges that are in underserved areas, that we can get those folks to stay in those communities, get higher pay, and bring higher incomes into those communities. That's really an initiative that I'm pushing hard on the UHG United Optum side, because I think that's where we make change as well.
Cool. Delilah, you turned your video on, so I assume you have a comment. You're muted again.
Better? Okay. Yeah, I think just a little bit to add to that. I think so many times people get paralyzed, right? So there's the folks that want to act and they're moving out, right? And those that are just kind of like, hey, I want to do something. I don't even know where to start, right? And let me go call a friend, or let me call, someone that understands kind of this space a little bit. And so I think we've got to be sensitive to that. But ultimately, so many times people get stuck because they don't have the relationships, right? They don't have the relationships, they don't have the partnerships, and so they're stuck saying, well, we don't know what to do, right? And they in so much of this is credibility, not just to cut a check, but how do you see it through and the partnership through long term. And so with that, I'll raise my hand, I'm sure folks here as well, but find people you do trust, right? And let them we'll extend the trust to other organizations, right? And we see things that are working. There's plenty of people that we can name. Probably all of us can rattle off people. If you look for board members, we've got a handful of people that are qualified, great candidates that can support in that space, right? And as you're building relationships with them, or organizations that are already doing amazing work and need some visibility, that need some support. But again, don't just disappear off after a check, right? Figure out how you partner long term to really make sustainable change within communities.
Thank you, Delilah. Marilyn, you warned us that we were going to run over and everybody. So I'm going to call it here. I apologize, but I'm going to go ahead and call it here and hand it back to Manish, because I know we're at 1:32. So thank you again for all the panelists. I really appreciate that you guys have given the time and appreciated the comments. Manish, back to you.
Thank you so much, Sumit. And again, I also want to take this opportunity to thank each one of you. I know all of you are associated with government contracting, and we are still in the fiscal year. We are still within September, so I know everyone is really busy. So thank you to all the panelists for participating today and giving us the time. It was a very, very thoughtful and very good panel. With that, I just have some closing slides, and we are done for today. We apologize, we went a little over, but first and foremost, I do want to thank CIT for their support all along. CIT has supported us even for the women's event, and now they're supporting us for this event. So another sponsor from our side. Our upcoming events, October 8th, TiE DC will be hosting an event with the Honorable Mr. Taranjit Singh Sandhu. This is being led by one of our TiE DC board members, Ravi Pulli. So please see if you can attend. We will be sending out invitations to all the charter members. This is a charter member only exclusive event, so we hope to see you there. It would be a excellent event to hear our new ambassador to the US as to how, what all things he has planned. And we are also giving the opportunity for charter members to submit their questions beforehand, which we will present to him. Then, of course, November 3rd, 4th, and 5th, we will be doing our marquee GovCon. As you all know, we've been building upon TiE DC's GovCon from last several years. This will be our third time doing it. Last year, it was attended by about 400 people. We had most of the attendees, on the panel, speakers were from the government. And once again, this year, we have invitations going out to several CIOs, CTOs, CXOs, procurement officers, several agency heads. So we are already in planning stages, and this will again be an excellent event. Though it will be virtual given the situation we are in, but it will still be well attended. And again, it remains our marquee event. So we hope to see you all there. With with that, thank you again. As always, you all will be getting an email from Jennifer, our executive director, asking for feedback. Please do give us feedback. We used a new platform today, VOA, so we would love to hear your feedback on that also, plus the general content and the programming that was provided for you today. So with that, I know we are over already 5 minutes, so thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you in the next event, October 8th. Thank you very much. Bye.